Great to be able to be here with you. I'm Steve Fowler. I would give you my title, but I have no idea what it is. It's safer that way, right? I'm technically church planting pastor for Emmanuel Baptist Church. I'm director of Prolific Church Planting Network. I'm interim at Blue Creek Baptist Church, restarting association in the Yellowstone area, and pastor of Racer Set Free in two places. So anyway, that's kind of who I am. A few of you I know me. I see some of you out there. It's great to be able to be here with you. I was living in Townsend for a number of years. Lived in Churchill for a few months. Lived in Three Forks for about 2 months, and then moved to Billings with the new job. So. The last 3 years have been an interesting time for Alicia and I. I am married. I have a beautiful wife named Alicia. She's greeting and stuff at Emmanuel Baptist Church this morning. We have a daughter that's married, happily married in Billings, and we have a son that's happily married in Fort Collins. What's that place down there? Colorado. And then and they're happily married, but hadn't figured out how to have grandchildren for us yet. And so for the last 4.5 years, we have a 7-year-old and a 6-year-old. They weren't that 4 and 5 years ago, but they are now. And Zach's downstairs with us. He got up this morning at 5:30 with me and headed over here. It is really a privilege to be here this morning, even though I had to drive over the pass with my truck and race car trailer behind me this morning, which was interesting. It got a little slick, but not too bad. But Curtis is right. He's one of my very best friends, and it always humbles me whenever he introduces me like that. But it's great to be able to be here and to fill in this morning and be able to share God's Word with you this morning and catch you up to date a little bit about what's going on with Prolific, which you support, and we thank you so much for that. God's doing exciting things in our midst and in your midst here in this place. About 3 years ago, a little over 3 years ago, I went to be church planting pastor at Emmanuel. Before that, we had helped start Crossroads. I'd been director of missions in this area and church planting catalyst in this area. There was a church that died in Gillette, Wyoming that Emmanuel they wanted to replant, but they needed a church to help them to do that. So they asked Emmanuel to do that. I was coming on as church planting pastor, so we started Redemption Church in Gillette, Wyoming. So if you're ever in Gillette, Wyoming, go to Redemption Church. It's down south of town, and Don Sullivan's a pastor there. They're doing very well. Baptized 2 or 3 a week or two ago, and God's working there in some exciting and wonderful ways. Right now, we're planting in Billings, Grace Point. Jim Tabor went there to plant that. He was kind of the associate pastor at Emmanuel Baptist Church. Felt called to pastor, so he went to pastor on the other side of Billings, over in the Heights. And we sent out about 100 people from Emmanuel with them, and they're running about 200 now and doing very well on the other side of Billings. So you have a major part in all of that. The next point you can kind of keep in your prayers. Of course, you got tons of stuff going on here we want to work with and help and plug in with. There's another place that God has took me about 5 years ago. I ended up going up and helping run races up in Edmonton. You know where Edmonton is? It's a long ways north of here, right? Edmonton. You know, there's lots of people that live in Edmonton. It's crazy. It's the largest, most north city in the world, they say. I have no idea anyway. There's 1.7 million people in the area close around Edmonton, and 2 million in the kind of the bigger surrounding area around Edmonton. And we have like 26 churches there that are SBC churches, Southern Baptist churches, and we have 6 buildings. So can you imagine that? We have 26 churches and 6 buildings. I was up there about, 6 or 8 months ago. Montana Baptists have done a partnership with Alberta, and Edmonton is still is a part of that. And so they came down, but I was up there about, maybe 8 months ago. And I said, so where should I go to church? They said, well, there's a church that started last week. You ought to go there. And I said, okay, cool. So I go and find this place where they're having church. And it's, and I'm going to mess it up. It's it's an African church. I can't remember it's an African church. And so I went and got there on time and everything. And eventually 100 people show up at this African church. I'm there 2.5 hours, and I understand about 10 words. But I heard Jesus every now and then. So I think they were doing good stuff. The pastor, it was amazing. He had fled his country because of, and he had sent his family out, and he ended up in Montreal, and then he ended up flying to Edmonton because he found out there was work there or whatever. He flew there by himself and started working or whatever, and then started a church, Congo. I think it's a Congo church. Anyway, but it's really awesome. So God's doing some awesome stuff. There's a biker church up there. You ever had a preacher preach like this? I know you never know what Curtis is going to preach in. But I wore this. I wore this on purpose. And I'll tell you the story about that. 1 Corinthians chapter 9, and I won't read that to you right now, but the latter part of 1 Corinthians chapter 9 talks about I become all things to all men, so I might save some. You remember, you're familiar with that passage? And that's kind of been my life verse. I started churches in northern Michigan, and while I was starting a church in northern Michigan, led a lady to the Lord, and she became one of my Sunday school teachers back when we had Sunday school, and she called me in the middle of the night, and preachers get all kind of calls. You just never know. And there's people that are scared because there's a spider in their house. You just never know. And she called me, and she was scared. Well, when she called me and she's scared, I'm scared because she could probably whoop me. She's only about that tall, but she's tough. And so Jeannie called and said, okay, I'll come. And so I went and sat outside on the picnic table with Jeannie. Her husband was doing drugs. Her husband was with another woman. The drug people were coming by and threatening to kill her because of what he owed them and everything. And she was scared. The 2 kids were in the house. And I stayed out there with her. And I asked a question that would change my life. I asked her, is there anything I can do other than, I prayed with her and she was doing okay, the police came, is there anything I can do other than sit out here and get shot with you to help? And she said, I expected her to do, you kind of laughed a little, not a lot, but a little. And I expected her to laugh and say, no, thank you for coming over. And I was going to go home to my wife and my daughter and get some rest. Well, she said, yes, there is. Oh, okay, what's that? She said, would you go out and be at the racetrack with my husband? I said, the one that's cheating on you and is doing cocaine right now and is threatened? She said, yes. I said, okay. She said, would you do that? I said, I like cars. Sure, I'd do that. You want me to go in the pits or in the stand? Where do you go in the pits and volunteer to work on his car? And I said, would he let me do that? And little did I know, yes, they'll let anybody work on their car, right? Some of those guys. Some of those guys are here this morning. But they said, so I went and I worked on his car and found out his nickname was Dirty Rick. So I was pastor in the pits with Dirty Rick. And so we started Racers Church, and you guys have allowed us to meet here with Racers Church. By the way, Kevin Griggs is on his way to Charlotte, North Carolina, Carolina. He will be praying in front of thousands of people this in the next weekend or two at the short track championships, and then I'll be down there for the world finals. And it's a great opportunity God's given us to be able to share with folks. But so God's grown that into some crazy things. My wife's chagrin, I still have a race car or two. But here Paul is saying, I become all things to all men so I might save some. We know Paul didn't save them. Who saves them? Jesus does. We're the witness to them, right? We're a witness and share Jesus with them. But God's doing some awesome stuff. I've got to tell you the last part here, and of kind of the update part. Whenever I was here, and then God called me to Billings to Emmanuel Baptist Church to be church planting pastor. I was on my way there, and I'd bugged a guy by the name of J.T. Coughlin a bunch of years about starting a Set Free Ministries up in Billings. I'd been after him for years to do that. Well, on my way moving over there, I looked down at my Facebook page, and it said, Steve Fowler is moving to Billings, Montana. And I said, well, that's good. I know that. I mean, and he's starting a Set Free church. Well, JT hadn't talked to me about this. And I said, well, so I immediately called JT and I said, I'm doing what? He says, well, you're starting a Set Free church. You've been after me all these years, so God told me you're going to start. I said, it'd been nice if he had told me that I was going to do that. And he said, well, you already have a group going with racers, right? He said, just call it Racers Set Free. I said, don't you have to have credentials to do that? I mean, I said, I can minister to racers. I can minister to the people downtown, feed and clothe and minister to them and share Jesus with them. But the 1% bikers, I don't know. I've had a bike all my life, but I've never run with that. I don't know how to do that. He said, just pray about it. I said, okay, I'll pray about it. Anybody ever told you that? Did you like it? I mean, it's true, but it's still annoying, right? They spiritualize it all. So I said, okay, I'll pray about it. Well, we started up. God did some cool stuff with that. And we were doing all kind of interesting things. And there's a guy at Emmanuel Baptist Church that I found out 12 years ago came out of the clubs and got radically saved. And so he came to help us one time. And I said, oh, Donnie, you need to come and help us. You need to work with me with this. This is great. You're an answer to prayer. And he says, no way. He said, they about killed me. He said, my bike is in the corner. It's been covered over because ever since I got right with God, I can't look at it. He said, I'm not going to do that. He said, I'll pray for those guys and pray for you that you find somebody, but it ain't me. Well, I saw him again 3 or 4 months later, and I said, hey, I really need you to do this. He says, no, I already told you no, I'm not going to do this. People like telling me no. And then the third time I went to him and I said, Donnie, I got to have you do this. And he looked at me and says, I said, would you pray about it? He says, okay. He come back to me I don't think it was a week later, and he said, okay, who's this JT guy? I've done all the research on Set Free. God wants me to do this. Well, the cool thing is, and I won't tarry too long with this, but God's done awesome things through the bike ministry that with Servants for Christ. You notice I'm Pastor Tank, by the way. You get a road name, you get your cut. See, I got my cut. I didn't even know about these things 5 years ago. I had to earn my cut, and when you earn your cut, and they give you a name. You don't choose your name; they give you your name. One of our guys' name is Bear Trap. And I thought that was pretty cool until I found out how he got it. He was sitting down in a chair, one of those folding chairs, and it fell apart, and it trapped him in there. He couldn't get out. So his name is Bear Trap. So my name's Pastor Tank, and JT said, "Oh, we know what we're going to call you." And I said, "What?" So he gave me that, and I said, "Pastor Tank." Just because I'm slightly overweight and whatever. He said, no, it's because whenever you were doing an outreach at South Park in Billings, Montana, there was a fight. We had the bluegrass band that was singing, and we had fed 250 people, and there was a fight on the other side. And I looked over there, being the great pastor I am, and said, there's a fight over there. And I looked a little more, and I said, they're just beating each other up. I'm not, it's not our deal, right? So I'm not going to do anything. I looked a little closer, and 3 or 4 of my guys in black shirts were over there tossing people around with Racer Set Free stuff on. I said, well, it wouldn't look right if the pastor wasn't over there. And so I waded in, and they said, this is our territory. And I said, no, it's not tonight. It's not. And anyway, dispersed them. One gal was on meth, and I had to walk her all the way out. And they were fighting over her, I think, 2 guys, of course. And so it was there like 30 or 40 people, and it was a wreck. Well, Donnie told JT that I waded in like a tank. And everything dispersed and everything was fine. So I'm Pastor Tank. So I still haven't got used to being called Pastor Tank. But God's doing some awesome things. We serve it. We go into places that I didn't know it was as bad as it was. See, it's nice to be ignorant sometimes. One time we got invited, we were in the club and we got invited to the back room, and I thought, cool. And the ones who knew what was going on said, oh no. I said, well, that's why we're here. Let's go. So I'm walking in. And then we got out afterwards, and everything was great, by the way. And they said, oh man, was I scared. And I looked at them and said, what are you scared about? And they were saying, you're just stupid because you don't even have a clue what was going on. And I said, well, you're right. But God's doing some awesome stuff. One more story about that. And because of your encouragement and your help, we're able to do these things. There's a guy. We meet on Tuesday night at 6 o'clock at South Park, or by South Park in Billings. We meet on Sunday night at 5 o'clock at North Park. And we're a church merged with us, and we're helping revive them, and hopefully we'll leave a church there when we go to our permanent place eventually when we find one. But there's been a guy that comes out of the clubs big time, comes out of prison, comes out of the clubs, comes out of all of it, and he looks the part, and it's really kind of cool. He I have so many stories. One of the Christian Biker Association guys was trying to witness to him, and he's a pretty big guy. And he went up to Alex, and he says he started sharing Jesus with him. And Alex looked at him and says, "If I don't accept this Jesus you're talking about, where am I going to go?" And he says, the Bible says you'll go to hell, and he grabbed him and said, "Good job, keep doing that." And he said, "Oh," he said, "Thank the good Lord that he's a faithful guy." The cool thing is, I got to get back tonight for that because his boy says, they said, "How do you want to celebrate your birthday?" His boy says, I want to celebrate it at Set Free with my church family." And I said, "Oh, that just gives tingles down. That's just crazy. It's great and it's awesome. God's doing some awesome stuff." And that's what we're here for, right? To share the good news of Jesus Christ with a lost and dying world. I want to share with you out of John chapter 21, the latter part of John chapter 21, just for a little bit this morning. And I just want to thank you for your support with Prolific, and we want to be supportive and helpful to you in every way possible. And again, your pastor is one of my very favorite people in the whole world. Looking at John chapter 21. I started preaching through John when we started the church up on the south side about 2.5 years ago. We're about done with John, but it's interesting here. Look what's happened here, beginning with verse 15, John chapter 21, and you know what's happened. Jesus has been crucified, right, and buried, and rose from the dead. And Peter has denied Christ, and I love Peter. How many of you like Peter? I love Peter because I can relate to Peter. And so Peter had denied Christ 3 times, and then he went fishing. And so here we are in verse 15. It says, when they had eaten breakfast, Jesus asked Simon Peter, son of John, do you love me more than these? And of course, what I didn't tell you is you know what happened. You know, Jesus shows up on the bank, right, while they're fishing. And says, why don't you throw out on the other side? And you know, these are the fishermen. Can you imagine what they were thinking? Yeah, right. Verses 1 through 10, if you would, Luke chapter 19, verses 1 through 10. I marked the wrong place, which is not very smart. Luke chapter 19, verses 1 through 10. He entered in Jericho and was passing through. There was a man named Zacchaeus who was the chief tax collector, and he was rich. He was trying to see who Jesus was, but he was not able because of the crowd, since he was a short man. So running ahead, he climbed up a sycamore tree to see Jesus, since he was about to pass that way. When Jesus came to the place, he looked up and said to him, Zacchaeus, hurry and come down, because today it is necessary for me to go to your house. So he quickly came down and welcomed him joyfully. All who saw it began to complain. He's gone to stay with a sinful man. But Zacchaeus stood there and said to the Lord, look, I'll give away half my possessions to the poor, Lord, and if I have extorted anything from anyone, I'll pay back 4 times as much. Today salvation has come to your house, to this house, Jesus told him, because he too is a son of Abraham. For the Son of Man has come to seek and save that which is lost. Aren't you glad that Jesus has come to seek and save that which was lost? Because guess who that applies to? Me, right? All of us. He came to seek and to save that which was lost. Jesus seeks us. He came to seek Peter and the disciples. After Peter had denied him 3 times, he came and sought him before going to heaven. He kept appearing to prove his resurrection, to care for the men that he commissioned his disciples. And I believe there's a reason Jesus asked 3 times, Peter, do you love me? Because Peter had denied Christ 3 times, right? So Jesus was making him say, pronounce that I love you, I will follow you, I will do your will in my life. So first of all, this morning, I want us to know and to realize and to share with the lost and dying world that Jesus seeks us. Jesus seeks us. Believe it or not, I believe Jesus seeks your neighbor, because he says he came to seek and to save that which was. Is that neighbor that really irritates the foo out of you? Are they lost? Most of them are, right? And guess what? Jesus came to seek him or her too. And we need to be that witness to them. We need to share with them. That's why one of the reasons I'm excited that you guys are involved with us with Prolific, and we're involved with you, because you're working to reach this valley and beyond, and Uganda, and then we're in Gillette, and we're working on Edmonton, and we're working a variety of places. We're trying to reach out to racers. We're trying to reach out to bikers. I believe we need to. I got a guy that called me yesterday who wants to come up and start a cowboy church in Billings. And I believe we need to start all kind of churches for all kind of people, so they can come to know the love of Jesus Christ. By the way, that same guy that called me up, that's probably going to come to Billings. Last summer, he was down on the Crow Reservation, and they baptized 40 some odd people down there doing cowboy camps, cowboy Bible camps. I don't know. shouldn't it be cowboy Indian or Indian? Anyway, I don't know what you call that. But that's good news, right? Sharing Jesus with people who need to hear about Jesus, who we need to love and care for and share with every day of our life. So first of all, Jesus seeks us. Second of all, Jesus challenges us. If we want to be right with him, we must listen to him. Peter jumped out of the boat, swam to the shore. He said, come and eat with me. And so what did he get when he got there? Hey, do you love me? Yeah, I love you. Do you love me? So yes, I love you. Do you love me? And by this time, like me or you probably, we'd getting a little annoyed. I think I've answered this twice. You know everything. You know that I love you. He said, feed my sheep. And later on he'll say, follow me. First of all, we need to know that Jesus seeks us. Second of all, he challenges us. If we want to be right with him, we must listen to him. And we must do what he says. We must do what he says. We must reach out to people. We must love people. We must allow him to transform our lives. There's many times I just like to be mad at somebody. I know you've never been like that. But, there's some things have happened over the last 3 or 4 years, and some Christian people, I just like to be ticked off at them. And I just like to wish that they would have difficulties. Again, I'm sure you've never thought those kind of things. But what does Jesus say? I'm supposed to love them. I'm supposed to care for them. I'm supposed to feed his sheep. I'm supposed to be about his business. While we were yet sinners, Christ what? He died for me while I was messing with him, right? While I was messing up, he died for me. And when somebody messes up, I want to hold it against them. Jesus says, you can't do it. You got to listen to me and do what I say. I'm reading a new book that's really offending me. It's called Unoffendable. I really don't like it because it's saying that we have really no reason to be offended by anybody. If we're genuinely Christian and we allow God to transform our lives and his Spirit to live in us, we shouldn't be offendable. We should live above that and love people despite what they do and how they live and what they say about us. I'm allergic to dogs and cats. So my little kids, they have chickens outside. Wasn't my choice. Well, the other day my neighbor walked in, and he's a gearhead too, but his wife walked in, and they're really elderly, and he's had a stroke and stuff, and in a bad way. I heard them talking about the next door neighbor that they had, and they called him Chicken Man. Well, guess who they were talking about? Pastor Tank, not Chicken Man. I started to get offended by that. But you know what? They need Jesus. I don't have time to waste being offended by stuff like that. That should help me to pursue them and love them more. God's still working on me with that stuff. But isn't that what Jesus did for us? He loved the very people that nailed him to a cross. What a job we have to do. So Jesus challenges us, and we need to do what he says. And last thing, thirdly, Jesus instructs us. Jesus instructs us, and I could preach here for a long, long time. I'm not going to. Don't get up yet. I'm not gonna do that. But look what happens here. He says, "Feed my sheep," and then verse 18. "Truly I tell you, when you were younger, you would tie your belt and walk wherever you wanted. But when you grow old, you will stretch out your hands, and someone else will tie you and carry you where you don't want to go." He said this to indicate how Peter would die. Jesus is the only one that could do this, right? So he says, you're going to die. You're going to die like this. And history tells us that Peter died a martyr's death. And he says, don't crucify me like Jesus was. Hang me upside down. I don't deserve to be crucified like Jesus. Hang me upside down. So after he told him you're going to die, you're going to die for me. And it's interesting after that, he asks about John, Peter does, which is another, Peter's just great. Then he says, after saying this, Jesus told Peter what? Follow me. Follow me. What's our job to do? If we call ourselves Christians, if we call ourselves followers of Jesus Christ, we need to follow him. Jesus instructs them, follow me. Do the same thing I do. I'm not going to go through all the passages that Jesus talked about. Remember, he went to the one guy and he said, I'll follow you anywhere. And Jesus says, okay, come and follow me. And he says, well, let me go bury my dad. He says, what? Leave the dead to bury the dead. That's kind of harsh, right? We don't know all the circumstances about that, but what he was saying is, if you're going to follow me, it's got to be a priority. What's a priority? I have my own definition of what a priority is. Don't look it up in Webster. But a priority, I can give you a great list of priorities, right? First, I need to serve Jesus. Second, I need to be there for my family. Thirdly, I need to do a good job raising my kids. Fourthly, I need to be a good employee where I work. Those are great, right? But what's a priority? It's something I get done. A priority is something I get done. I need to make sure I get following Jesus done. That needs to be first on my list, that I follow him. So that was one of the instances. There's plenty of instances where Jesus said, follow me. And there's another instance in Matthew. He says, take up, if you want to be my disciple, take up your cross and what? Follow me. That sounds pretty serious, right? That means basically give up your life. I'm bought with a price. I'm yours now. I'm here to tell you, if you do that, you'll get involved in some of the most exciting, wonderful, crazy things you have ever been a part of in your life. Just look at me. I'm a servant for Christ with Set Free Ministries. So take up your cross and follow me. And then I'm reading T4T, which talks about the multiplying church. And he says, and the emphasis throughout that is, follow me and I will make you fishers, not of fish, but fishers of men. What do we need to be? We need to be fishers of men. We need to be sharing Jesus with a lost and dying world. We need to be about his business, sharing what they desperately need to hear, the good news. And you're a big part of that in helping work with us with Prolific and the cooperative program and all that you do in the valley to reach this valley. And we'll just need to pray more that God would just grow and just turn this valley upside down. After they did that, one of the things was the people that were in the town said, "Oh, here comes those people that has turned the world upside down." Wouldn't you like to have that? It's getting turned upside down right now, right? But it's kind of the wrong way in a lot of ways. I would love for it to be turned upside down for Jesus' sake. That's what we need to be praying for and praying about. We need to follow him. We need to do the same. Live with integrity. Love the Father. Share Jesus. Disciple others who do the same. Jesus was training Peter to multiply here. We must realize Jesus seeks us, so we must seek others to share Jesus with them. He instructs us. We must obey. And he commissions us to follow him. And we need to be about his business. And that will give you the greatest life that you can have. And God will welcome you into his presence one of these days and say, "What? Well done, good and faithful servant."